Hey, we're back. I'm Keith.
I'm Troy.
Today we are going to be talking about a potentially controversial subject.
Your precious children. We love your precious, itty bitty, screaming, demanding, entitled floor pounders that are going to hold their breath until they turn blue.
Well, we were having the conversation earlier about uh, a scary statistic. That statistic being that 70% of black children born into the world today are born into single parent homes. And there's other similar statistics for other races, including white people. Uh, the and part of we have a number of issues with that. The first one being is, obviously, what hellions other people's children can be, and these days it seems to be worse than worse than ever.
I would point out that only white children actually turn blue when they throw a temper tantrum. Rather. I'm not singling anybody out. That whole turning blue thing, we whites have that on lockdown.
Now, you can blame the guys for this all you want to. Black guys, white guys, whatever.
Fathers stepping off after the kid has been, after they're sperm donors. Is really all they are.
Making his deposit and being on his way.
Gotta go.
That's part of the problem. The other part of the problem, and I've actually witnessed this firsthand with a number of my friends, or their friends. Women wanting children purely for the sake of having children.
Accessories.
Essentially, this selfish need, this selfish desire to have children. Now, I understand it's biological. Women are programmed to want children. It ensures the the propagation of the species. But again, you're bringing these children in not for their. It seems you're doing it more for your own personal benefit than the benefit of the child. And that leads to the other problem, which is having these overly entitled, bratty, whiny, get everything they want kids. And you see, if you go out in public nowadays, go to the mall for like an hour. You'll see what I'm talking about.
These kids that have been fed a steady diet of Captain Crunch and Coca-Cola, that was breakfast. And then they're off to the mall for some shopping, for some browsing, for some consuming. And of course, mom has got a dozen bags under her arm at this point of, a couple of $100 worth of useless shit. So Junior wants the latest Bone Storm video game or whatever. They've walked past, Babbage's or GameStop, and now, you must have Angry Birds 6, the chickening. And if the kid doesn't get Angry Birds 6, the chickening, he basically goes into this mode. A conniption is when a brain cell begins to percolate, and then the child, deprived of Angry Birds 6, the chickening, begins to kind of lose control of their body functions and behavior. And next thing you know, they're on the ground, they're throwing up, both fists, they're demanding to have their needs met. And can you blame them? They might not have been born with a silver spoon in their mouth, but they've been wearing $200 sneakers every time they outgrew the last pair of $200 sneakers. They've had baby Air Jordans since before they could fucking walk.
Right. Well, part of that is, and especially the women that have children for the experience, for their own selfish desires and whims, tend to spoil the children quite badly. And that's, it's throwing, it's bad stuff begetting more bad stuff.
And well, it's a corruption of an ideal. A parent should want their child to have better than they did coming up. And there's a healthy representation of improving future generations of your family's lifestyle, standard of living. And I think really that's the real division. You have a lifestyle versus a standard of living. If a child is raised in a family where he's got 3 square meals a day, he's got access to stimulation outside of the Xbox and the laptop, then generally speaking, that kid's going to go into sort of a more well-adjusted or kindergarten, first grade, um, got a full stomach. They can focus on things. But a kid who's become accustomed not to a standard of living, but to a lifestyle, his mom has, like I said, she's been buying him the $100 booties or the Oshkosh Bagash, the curse of white children everywhere, jumpsuits that say Oshkosh Bagash, or they've worn a onesie one time and threw it away because the mother didn't think it looked cute enough on them at 2 o'clock in the morning when they're drooling away like the little weasel that they are.
Another problem, and I've and this permeates pretty much all of society. It's children now being rewarded for expected behavior. What I mean by that is, um, you have company over, and the child behaves himself. The child, is polite, uses his manners, and they get a reward for that. When I was a kid, that was just kind of expected behavior. I didn't get a reward. Matter of fact, if I didn't adhere to my expected behavior, I got a butt whipping, essentially. I got the opposite of a reward.
Well, I think in some households, a reward is simply defined as the absence of an ass whooping. So,
it wasn't mine. But
the perfect attendance certificate is another you mentioned.
Yeah, again, and they actually had that when I was in school too. Was the whole the award for perfect attendance? It's like, well, aren't you expected to attend? And I understand it's meant as an incentive. And don't get me wrong, I'm not decrying people who reward their children. I am decrying people who reward their children constantly, because then the child has no concept of they lack that concept of being self-sufficient for the sake of being self-sufficient, or doing something nice, or behaving or sharing for its own sake. It's that expectation of a reward. You're essentially you're spoiling the child is what you're doing, but you're also much further down the road, you're making the child less manageable. Say, because when a child is 5 years old, sure, you'll entice them with dessert for finishing all their vegetables. That's fine. But when the child gets to be 12 and you're still having to entice them to finish their vegetables with dessert, there's something wrong there. That behavior they should have learned, they should have graduated to a new level of expectation. In other words, I'm now expected to eat my vegetables and clean my plate, and wash my dish, dry it, and put it away. Then I can have dessert. Or maybe there may not be any damn dessert at all. I just need to eat my dinner.
Well, I do reward myself with dessert, but
I reward myself with buffet.
Now, my concern with the perfect attendance certificate, I see that it's been called by some, you could call it a form of cultural Marxism, in that no child is a failure. We don't want any child's self-esteem to be injured in any way, shape, or form. And when I look at the perfect attendance certificate, I see a thank you. I see somebody acknowledging a child's efforts at exposing his peers to any number of airborne pathogens over the previous school year. He got that perfect attendance award, yeah, but he had SARS. So, there are times when it might be best to keep your kid at home, when he's, sweating blood, and you bundle little Charlie up and send him to school. I believe that is a weapon of mass destruction that you've unleashed on kids. So I think the perfect attendance award at what price?
Yeah, and now, and don't get me wrong. I mean, rewards can actually be a good thing, but I think they're best done like when I was in school. My parents kind of had, especially high school, my parents kind of had this thing where it's like, well, we'll give you $5 for a B, and then we'll give you $20 for every A you bring home. But see, that's a long term. That's not like this short incremental daily thing. That actually taught me to set a long term goal. quarterly, obviously, but also the entire school year.
I didn't know you went to a yeshiva school. The money for the grades. I'm being anti-Semitic. I'm sorry. That was.
One of these days, we're going to do a video where you don't mention Marx or Hitler. I'm going to be impressed when we do.
No, I just a dollar per grade. In all seriousness, guilt. I mean, yeah, that's a. I'm saying that every time you pay a kid for a good grade, I like the idea of incentive. So I've had kids that I've taught guitar lessons to, in which, that come to the lesson month 2, month 3, and they go from an acoustic guitar to a little starter Strat rig as an incentive. They've done well in school, plus they did their guitar lessons to the degree that, okay, maybe a reward is in order. But again, when you reward expected behavior, the reward unto itself becomes, again, if you don't do this, there's no consequence. So you're really lowering the bar for failing to adhere to certain social norms. So paying a kid per grade in junior high or high school, this is why we've dangerously turned a lot of kids loose from high school and college, woefully unprepared, because they were athletes. And so there's that aspect where they're getting rewarded. A young kid gets a trophy for perfect attendance in soccer. I got one in swim class at the Stern Center at the College of Charleston. Everybody got there was a top achieving student. I didn't do the high dive. I had to opt out of that. So I got the smaller trophy that was for not ever drowning. And so, yeah, it is a form of cultural Marxism in which a child is rewarded for not doing something that he wasn't supposed to do in the first place. So you didn't throw a tantrum in the mall, so you're going to get Angry Birds 3 or Angry Birds 6, the chickening. But the reverse of that, the kid knows that by throwing the tantrum, he's still affected the equilibrium.
Well, when I didn't get good grades, I know I still got there were still consequences for that. Got my ass beat when I was younger, and then as I was older, I'd lose privileges and so on and so forth. So it was on one end you had the reward, but on the opposite end you also had punishment. So the expected behavior was still there. One way or the other, you got to get at least semi-decent grades. And you notice that the reward was $5 for a B, $10 for an A, or 20, whatever it was. Anything less than that, sorry, Charlie, you're average. Guess what? You're average. No reward, no risk, no reward. That's the way I saw it.
Bad dog, no biscuit.
But there's other ways you can teach your children to be good with money, but that's a topic for another video. But yeah, that seems to be permeating, and I don't know if it's getting worse or not. I just know I've been lambasted by a number of my female friends that are mothers when I've made comments, saying, you shouldn't reward a child for everything, them thinking that I'm some kind of hard ass that would never reward the child at all. And that's not the case. It's just nowadays it seems people are rewarding kids for things that, we just were expected to do when we were kids. So that's my thoughts on the matter.
That's my thoughts on the matter.